Candace Leitner, 1980 to 1984. On May 3, 1980, 13-year-old Carrie was walking to a carnival in Fair Oaks, California, when she was killed by a repeat drunk driver who fled the scene. Following the death of one of her twin daughters, Candace rallied other grieving mothers to create Mothers Against Drunk Drivers on September 5th, Carrie's birthday. One of those mad moms was Cindy Lamb, whose 5-month-old daughter, Laura, who became the nation's youngest quadriplegic after a 1979 drunk driving crash. From the very first press conference in 1980, MADD has put a face on the violent crime of drunk and drugged driving and turned statistics into stories to remind the public that each death and injury is completely preventable. Norma Phillips Thorworth, 1985 to 1988. Norma became involved with MADD, whose name had changed to Mothers Against Drunk Driving, shortly after the death of her son, Dean, and his girlfriend, Tish, who were killed by a drunk driver on Thanksgiving Day, 1981. Norma passed away in 2001. We'll always be grateful for her lasting mark on MADD's grassroots advocacy work. Mickey Sadoff, 1988 to 1991. Mickey and her husband, Ron, were hit and injured by a 24-year-old drunk driver on January 16, 1982. While coping with her own injuries, Mickey cared for her husband, who suffered severe head trauma, and reassured her 2 young sons that their family would survive. Mickey was the first of 3 national presidents to serve as an injury survivor. Milo Kirk, 1991 to 1993. On Easter weekend, 1981, Milo Kirk's family vacation turned to tragedy when her 9-year-old stepson, Kevin, riding with family friends, was hit by an underage drunk driver with 3 prior DUIs. Kevin suffered severe head injuries and loss of sight in one eye. His best friend and an adult were killed, and 1 adult was injured. Rebecca Brown, 1993 to 1995. Becky Brown and her husband Charlie were driving home from a party on December 8, 1979, when police cars raced past them. As they came upon the scene of the crash, they were devastated to discover that the victim was their 18-year-old son, Marcus. He was killed by a 19-year-old drunk driver. Becky passed away in 2012. We'll always remember her for asking every day, what can MADD do to save more lives? Catherine Prescott, 1995 to 1997. Catherine joined MADD soon after the June 28, 1981 crash that killed her 16-year-old son. Jay was having car trouble and was pushing his vehicle to the side of the road when he was struck and killed by a 21-year-old repeat offender. Catherine balanced her no-nonsense approach with tenderness for victims' rights. Carolyn Nunnally, 1998 to 1999. On May 14, 1988, the nation experienced its worst drunk driving crash when a wrong-way drunk driver hit a church bus full of children returning from an amusement park. Of the 27 people killed, Patty, Carolyn's 10-year-old daughter, was the youngest to die. 34 others were injured. In memory of the victims and in honor of the survivors, MADD commemorates this heartbreaking anniversary every year. Millie Webb, 2000 to 2002. On a Tennessee country road in 1971, a drunk driver with a .08 BAC rear-ended the family car. Riding with her husband Roy, Millie suffered a broken neck and burns on nearly 73% of her body. Millie was 7 months pregnant at the time. Her daughter Kara was born prematurely and legally blind as a result of the crash. Their 19-month-old nephew, Mitchell Pruitt Jr., died shortly after the crash. However, their 4.5-year-old daughter, Lori, suffered for 2 weeks before dying. Having to endure more than 20 surgeries, Millie turned her scars into stars and was a shining light when .08 BAC was passed into federal law. Wendy Hamilton, 2002 to 2005. On September 19, 1984, in New York, Wendy's sister Becky was driving her 22-month-old son, Timmy, to run errands when a drunk driver crossed the center line, killing Becky. Timmy was rushed to the hospital, where he later died. The drunk driver was a repeat offender, had 4 open alcohol bottles in the car, and was at .16 BAC 3 hours after the crash. Wendy's strength helped her and her family, as this crash was one of the 3 separate drunk driving crashes that killed 4 family members. Glenn Birch, 2005 to 2008. The sounds of an ice cream truck brought the children out of their homes and into the streets, including 21-month-old Courtney Birch. At the same time, a drunk driver was barreling down the road, hitting and killing little Courtney on May 3, 1988. In honor of his son, Glenn was MADD's first dad to serve as a national president. Laura Dean Mooney, 2008 to 2011. Mike Dean left his wife and 8-month-old daughter for a work trip. A drunk driver driving the wrong way down a 4-lane divided highway hit him, leaving his wife without a husband and their daughter without a father. Laura picked up the pieces of her life and built a new one dedicated to ending drunk driving once and for all. Jan Withers, 2011 to 2014. A dancer who loved walking around barefoot, Alyssa Joy Withers filled every room she walked in. Her life ended at just 15 when an underage drunk driver decided to scare his passengers and lost control of the car, throwing her into the woods. Alyssa's spirit lives on through her mother, Jan, who asked audiences around the world to say Alyssa's name when sharing her story. Colleen Sheehan Church, 2015. A late-night pizza run on July 10, 2004 turned to tragedy. 18-year-old Dustin was riding in the back seat when the underage driver who had been drinking and using drugs veered off a Connecticut roadway and into a river. The 2 in the front seat escaped the sinking car, but Dustin drowned. Today, Colleen helps other victim families find hope through the pain of drunk and drugged driving. 13 national presidents, one common goal: representing innocent victims and survivors to save lives and prevent injuries.